All the horrors of war suffered by Ukraine, the slaughter, the atrocities, the bombings and the terrible hardship came flooding back on today's first anniversary of Russia's invasion. Also uppermost in people's minds, though, was something else: the extraordinary courage of a nation that has refused to capitulate to Moscow's military juggernaut. It is, of course, a war that tonight remains far from over. We'll hear from the frontline shortly. But with the grief, the anger and the trauma commemorated by today's events, the determination of Ukraine's remarkable leader came through loud and clear. President Zelensky vowed his country will do everything to gain victory. Every tomorrow is worth fighting for, he said.
The men and women to whom Ukraine owes its existence. Regiments of the armed forces presented with new standards, battle honours from Mariupol, Kherson, Bakhmut, dozens of engagements that first stopped the Russian advance and then began to drive it back. Without these regiments, Ukraine would by now be a vassal state of Moscow. Honours and gallantry medals for the living. But too many, far too many of these awards for heroism could only be given to families left behind. For the tens of thousands of fallen, President Zelensky led the country in a minute's silence. He spoke to the nation in a televised address, as he does every day, remembering his first dramatic appearance at 7 a.m. on the morning of the invasion, reassuring his people he was going nowhere. He's been good to his word.
It's been a year of endurance, a year of compassion, a year of courage, a year of pain, a year of hope, a year of unity, a year of invincibility.
It's not hard to imagine what would have been happening in central Kiev today had victorious Russians now been in control of this city. These were the scenes in the skies above Kiev that morning. A lightning strike by Russian special forces against a major airport in the suburbs of the city. And these the triumphant videos released by the Russians of the blitzkrieg victory they thought they were winning. Of course, nobody knew it at the time, but it was right here in Hostomel on that first day of the war that the fate of Kiev, and thus perhaps of Ukraine, was decided. Secure this airbase to bring in supplies of troops, armour, helicopters, and the Russians could have launched a thrust directly into the heart of Kiev. When they failed to secure it, capturing the capital became nigh on impossible. The graveyard of Russian armour and vehicles at Hostomel testifies to that failure. One victory saved the capital, but modern mechanised warfare, especially the pitiless Russian way of war, left behind thousands of murdered civilians, drove 8 million to flee from their country, reduced towns in the path of tanks and artillery to shattered concrete skeletons. Towns can one day be rebuilt, not the lives of widows like Yaroslava, who lived peacefully with her husband Vova in Borodyanka. This time last year, neither had any argument with Russia.
People say that your husband is your other half. He wasn't my half. He was my entirety. God had given me such a person, but I couldn't save him.
A family's grief multiplied tens of thousands of times across this country. A tsunami of tears driven by the imperial ambitions of one man. President Zelensky promised tonight there would be victory, that the sacrifice of these wounded soldiers he honoured today would not have been in vain. But when that would be, when his country's pain would end, he couldn't say. James Mates, News at 10, Kiev.
Well, indeed, fierce fighting with huge loss of life continues along the war's front line in the south and east of Ukraine. But this is a very different war from the one envisaged by President Putin when his troops rolled across the border a year ago. By the end of last March, Russian forces had made big advances in the south and the east, while in the north they were just 25 kilometres from the centre of Kyiv. But in the months that followed, Ukraine pushed back, regaining significant areas of territory, first around Kyiv, then around Kharkiv, and finally in the south, retaking Kherson. Well, Emma is in Kharkiv tonight. And Emma, we've seen many stands of solidarity from around the world today. How is that actually communicated to the fighters? Do they understand it on the front line? And if they do hear about it, what does it mean to them?
Well, we've spent much of the last week on the front line with those soldiers that you speak of, and without question there is a great belief in what they're doing, and there is also a real sense of pride and also gratitude for the solidarity that they see coming from around the world. But over and above all of that, there is one thing that they say over and over again, and that is, thank you for your support, we're grateful for it, but we need more. We need more ammunition, we need more weaponry, we need fighter jets, we need much more than you're willing to give at the moment. And without that, we cannot win this war. And they are very clear in that, and they are very clear in that because they see every single day on the battlefield the reality of it. They won't get into figures here about how many people have been killed or injured, but without question there have been terrible bloodbaths in this region. You can probably hear behind me now the sirens are going off again. We're in Kharkiv. It's a standard city in this country, but you know, look behind me, it's in darkness. People live in fear all the time about what is going to go on. When these sirens go off at night, they don't run to the shelters anymore, they stay in their homes. But they know that they're under threat all the time. They know that at some point something truly dreadful could happen, and that without the help of the West, without the help of other people, they really do have a very big battle to win this fight. They have hope, but they have fear about how long it's going to go on.
Well, Emma, we're thinking of all those in Kharkiv, that they'll be safe tonight, and indeed you and your team also. Thank you very much indeed for that.